Okay, so the last chapter will be environmental sustainability. Even though it seems like a very easy chapter, it's actually not that easy. There are a few terms that you have to know before you actually are able to master this topic. So, environmental sustainability means an environmental condition that remains the same without any reduction or depletion of natural resources, with an assured quality of the surrounding environment for a long period of time. So what that means is you want an environment where the resources that in this world, the coal in this world, the iron in this world, they do not deplete, they do not finish. So you want to try and use the so you want to have an environment where you don't cause pollution, where you don't use up every single resource in the world. So that is called environmental sustainability, just to control your usage so it doesn't finish up. Um, so as I said, the just to the environment is like one of the most overlooked topics in the chapter, but it's honestly quite important. So first of all, it talks about climate change and global warming. So climate change is the change in temperature of the Earth, and it's also the changes of like of winds, changes of season, like how it snows in certain desert areas. So global warming is the process of the temperature. Is global warming is when the temperature heats up, while climate change is like the change of the effects on the Earth. Like for example, less rainfall, or forest fires, or more deserts, or ice melting. So that's climate change. Global warming is the increase of the temperature. So the main reason why climate change and global warming happen is because of greenhouse gases. So how does the greenhouse effect work? So when sunlight enters the earth, usually and not usually, usually the light is reflected back to space in the form of infrared rays. So like when the sun goes to earth to give you sunlight, the heat energy will bounce from the earth back to the space. However, because of these greenhouse gases such as CFC, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen oxide, uh, they cause the heat to stay on the earth. So one way of saying it is that the heat gets reflected back into the earth. Another way you can say is another way you can say it as is that the greenhouse gases absorb the rays, absorb the light, and yeah, basically the greenhouse gases absorb the heat energy, and then they go back to earth. Like usually it goes to earth, reflects, and then goes back up to space. But then instead these CFCs absorb the heat energy, and then there's a lot of and then most of these heat energy are and then because these greenhouse gases are like everywhere around earth, and they're all absorbing heat energy. So because of this, the average temperature will go up because all of these greenhouse gases are absorbing more heat energy, so they're hotter. So it causes the world to be hotter because they're everywhere, and it causes the average temperature to go up, and that's why global warming happens. So long story short, heat energy that is not reflected keeps the earth at an average temperature, so it is not too cold for the survival of organisms. However, some gases such as carbon dioxide cause the increase in concentration to of these gases. So more heat energy is trapped, which consequently increases the temperature of the Earth. So what this means is, if Earth were to not have any gases at all, then there will be no heat on this Earth. It will just reflect and then go back. So like at night it will be very, very, very hot, very, very, very cold, and that would be nice, right? To have everything to be cold. So of course, you need some greenhouse gases to be on Earth to trap some of the heat. However, because of these new activities that we have, they are now there is now too much greenhouse gases in the air. So now it's too hot. That's why greenhouse effects happens. So how do you release greenhouse gases? Fossil fuel burning, deforestation, animal farming, agricultural activities, and usage of cooling substances. So for these four is kind of obvious, but deforestation. The reason why it affects carbon dioxide is because when there's no trees, there is no photosynthesis, and there's no photosynthesis. So the carbon dioxide just accumulates slowly. Next is deforestation and loss of biodiversity. So, deforestation is when you clear a lot of trees to construct buildings or for agricultural activities, and it causes a lot of extinction of animals and plants, flora and fauna. And people do deforestation to obtain like wood, timber for mining, to build roads. But if you do it too much, you will erode the soil. It will cause flash floods. It will cause climate change, and because the animals go extinct, it causes a loss of biodiversity, and it affects the nitrogen cycle, water cycle, and carbon cycle, because all of these involve all of these involve trees. And yeah, if you cut down if you cut down these areas, there wouldn't be water to be there is less water to be able to be absorbed. Like, for example, if you cut down mangrove trees, then there won't be any water blocking the air. There won't If you cut down mangrove forests, then there will be no natural barrier. So floods will occur easily, for example. So yeah, wait. Yeah, my book is kind of messed up. Um, Wait. Okay, I don't think this thing will come out, but this is gonna come out definitely. Eutrophication. Eutrophication is it's okay. It's kind of hard to explain, but eutrophication is when long story short, the water is polluted. But to explain eutrophication in a better way, it is when algal bloom occurs. So algal bloom, which causes the death of aquatic life, and the water quality becomes worse. So eutrophication happens when the water becomes rich with nutrients but bad nutrients, resulting in changes to the structure of the ecosystem. So for example, nitrate and phosphate. If you have too much nitrate and phosphate, it will what? If you have nitrate and phosphate in your water, the algae love nitrate and phosphate ions. So the algae will grow faster. So it will cause algae bloom. So when it causes algae bloom, the since wait, it causes algae bloom, but since algae can make their own food, but the oxygen is for themselves, if I'm not wrong. So if there is algae everywhere and they only make food for themselves, and then they block the sunlight, so the plants below the algae do not make food, so they do not make oxygen for the animals, and then there's no oxygen for the animals, and then they die. So yeah. So the way algal bloom works is it blocks sunlight from penetrating into the bottom of the sea, when there are actually other plants that need to undergo photosynthesis. So in the end, everything dies because there's no oxygen. So another thing is, when there is so much algae and when there is so many dead organisms, it will cause a lot more decomposers to show up, because decomposers love dead bodies. So when there's so many dead bodies, there'll be so many decomposers that they'll be requiring so much oxygen. So this means that there more oxygen is required. So this means that the BOD, the biochemical oxygen demand, is high. So what is BOD? What is biochemical oxygen demand? It is the total amount of oxygen needed by microorganisms to decompose organic materials in water. So what that means is, BOD is how much oxygen does the decomposer need to decompose everything in the water. So if there is no dead bodies, then you don't need oxygen to decompose. But if there is a lot of dead bodies, then you need a lot of oxygen to decompose. So if there's a lot of dead bodies, that means your water is bad. If there are no dead bodies, that means your water is good. So so it indicates how good your water quality is. So a low BOD level, which means there are not many a low BOD level means that you don't need much oxygen, so it's good quality. But if you need a lot of oxygen, then it's going to be a high score, so it's bad quality. So what again? The way they test for BOD presence and for BOD level is they use what's it again? Methylene blue. They use methylene blue solution. So how does methylene blue solution work? As the name says, when you put methylene blue solution into water, when you put methylene blue solution into water, it will show a blue color. But then the methylene blue solution becomes the methylene blue solution appears blue when the methylene blue solution becomes blue when there is presence of oxygen. So what that means is, if the methylene blue disappears, like it becomes from blue to colorless, that means that there is no more oxygen. The methylene blue only appears when there is a presence of oxygen. So what this means is, the faster the methylene blue disappears, the more oxygen is used up. So the faster the oxygen is used up. So that means that it has a very high BOD level, because there's a lot of oxygen needed to break down the stuff. So if you were to put methylene blue in distilled water, nothing will happen. But if you were to put distilled water, if you were to put methylene blue in polluted water, it will decompose very fast. It will decolorize very fast. Next is pollution. Again, it may seem like a little bit, but it's quite important. So air pollution happens when there's an increase in the pollutant substances such as gases, smoke, dust, and particles. So basically, for example, from vehicles you get like carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, smoke and soot, which is basically carbon monoxide. There's even lead, and then there's hydrocarbon gases. For pollutant substances, the main ones are sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide, but there's also these two carbon oxides. And then from open burning, there is carbon dioxide and smoke and soot. And if there is not enough oxygen, then it will produce carbon monoxide as well. So again, these will cause global warming, number one. And number two, they form acid rain. Not all of them form acid rain. It's mainly nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide. No, not carbon monoxide. Actually no, carbon monoxide does count because they got oxygen. So these two mainly, what happens is, when they are too much in the air, they can actually react with the water. And when they react with the water, let's just say that when they react with the water vapor in the air, let's just say that they form acids, nitric acid, sulfuric acid. And when these like sulfur dioxide, nitric acid, and nitrogen monoxide are abundant in the air, when they react with water vapor, they will produce acids, and after the water vapor becomes condenses and it becomes water again, it will rain back down to earth through acid rain, because the acid is inside the water, so that's why it rains acid rain. And this is really bad because acid rain is acidic, and as I said earlier, plants do not like acidic conditions. They cannot survive under acidic conditions. Acid rain causes the soil pH to drop, number one. Number two, acid rain causes the pH of water to drop, number two. And this means that plants die, and this also means that fish die. And number three, acid rain is acidic. It is corrosive. It can hurt your body. It can damage your body. So you don't want to be under the rain if it's acidic. So if you remember chemistry yesterday, the sulfur dioxide can become sulfuric acid, the nitrogen oxide can become nitric acid, and then they can rain as acid rain. Next is thermal pollution. So thermal pollution is a very interesting one because I've never heard of it before. But basically, from factories from factories, you know how they use water as a cooling agent, or maybe they use water to manufacture stuff, and after they use the water is usually very hot. So like normally, like the water, if the water is used as a cooling agent, it will release heat, until it becomes hot. So when it becomes very hot, and then the factories just dump it into the water, into the rivers, what happens is the temperature of the river will increase. Again, when you dump hot water into the river so much, it will cause the temperature of the river to increase. And what happens if it increases? Again, I mentioned about it earlier. Animals need to feel comfortable with with life processes. Number one, pH. Number two, temperature. If it's too hot or too cold, their enzymes won't work as well. They can't. Maybe the eggs will hatch faster, and that's really bad. So yeah. Basically, when the temperature is too high, number one, aquatic organisms can't function normally because their enzymes are not as active. Number two, their body level is too high, so it might be like feverish. Like fishes have like a certain amount of temperature as well. So a too high of a temperature will cause them to have sicknesses. And number three, number three is where was it again? I already hear this now. Let me just find it again. Number three is dissolved oxygen content in the water will decrease. So like you wonder why does it happen? From my understanding, it's because the hotter it is, the plants in the water cannot produce oxygen as fast. So that means that dissolved oxygen will be lower. And if it's lower, then fishes will die because there's not enough oxygen to survive. So number one, it will cause biochemical processes to slow down because number two, their body is not used to the new temperature. And number three, there's less oxygen in the water and they will die. And again, BOD level, algae don't just like phosphate or nitrate ions, they also like high temperatures. So they will have a high BOD level. It will cause a higher BOD level because there needs to be more decomposers. For noise pollution, it's just kind of logical. I don't need to explain this much. Basically, something annoying stuff that gets into your ear, just like my voice. It might cause high blood pressure, it might cause depression, it might cause headache. And then here it says human population growth explosion. So basically, long story short, when there is so much people in this world, it means that there is so much people that do not care about the earth, which means that there is so much people causing pollution, which means loss of biodiversity, deforestation, and global warming. So to overcome these problems, they need to do water treatment. Okay. Next, preservation, conservation, and restoration of ecosystem. So one example, no one example. What do these mean? So for preservation, long story short, it means protecting the ecosystem so that it will remain in its natural condition. For conservation, it says here, restore environmental resources such as water, forest, energy, air, minerals, and among others, so they will continue to exist. But what conservation really means is using it for your own benefits, but do not use it all up. You want to make sure that there is going to be some remaining so that it will continue it will continue. Like for example, trees. You need some trees for like your labor for your furniture. So you can cut down trees, but you want to grow them back, because if you don't grow them back, then there will be less trees. There will be less absorption of carbon dioxide, and it will cause global warming. So to conserve, you need to replant trees, and you need to make sure that when you cut trees down, you want to plant them back. You want to plant them back. I think that's what conservation means. I hope it's not confused with restoration. But yeah, it basically means maintaining. Preservation is protecting, conservation is maintaining. And And you want to do conservation because after a lot of this pollution or a lot of this destruction of habitats happen, you want to make sure that they continue to exist. You don't want them to be gone forever. So there are two ways: ex situ and in situ. In situ conservation is remaining these wildlife in their natural habitat. So remaining these species in their natural habitat. So like the advantage is they are able to continue living in their own habitat. So in situ conservation is like making sure that that habitat does not die off, does not get removed. And then ex situ conservation is making sure that the animals do not die, make sure that they survive, conserving them. And normally you do it through zoos or parks, botanical parks. The last one is restoration. So restoration is like recovering. If preservation is protecting, conservation is what's it called again? Maintaining. Then restoration is recovering. So it is to renew or restore natural ecosystems that have been damaged, deteriorated, or destroyed. Like for example, if you cut down trees and you don't grow them, and you're like, oh no, we have to grow them back. So you're gonna grow them back. So that's restoration because you're growing them back. That's the easy way to explain it lah. Next is practices in environmental sustainability. So what should you do to save the world? Number one, save energy. So how do you save energy? You do not want to use fossil fuels anymore. You want to use electric energy. You want to use green energy. So how do you do that? Number one, don't use too much electricity. And number two, try and switch more towards solar panels, which is here. The next one is using alternative renewable energy. So use solar panels, you use biomass, you use renewable energy. Use those wind turbines and so on. You use energy that can be renewable instead of using fossil fuels. And number three is to use 5 R's: rethink, repair, reuse, reduce, recycle. Self-explanatory. Number four is to use more environmental friendly transport. Number one, carpooling. Number two, don't use cars. Use public transport. Number three, use bicycles. So, next is to manage your waste. So we talked in chemistry about wastewater management, and then there's also domestic waste management. So the Department of Environment should make sure that they control how much waste is produced and who is responsible for it. So upcycling is turning all substances into new things, like improving on certain waste. So you can upcycle these waste substances to become better, and this will reduce waste. Next is biological control. So instead of using pesticides, you use animals to control the population. Like for example, using owls or using cats to kill rats. And then lastly is water saving. So save water lah. When you brush your teeth, turn off the tap when you're not brushing your teeth. I think the last one is food security. Oh no, this is also green technology, sorry. So food security, there's not really much. It's just making sure that you have food and you have access to food and you're able to use food without like risking anything. So there are 4 main components: availability, access, food utilization, and food stability. Are you able to is there enough food in the market? Are you able to get the food? Are you able to use the food properly? And is everyone able to get the food? Like is everyone able to get the food often? Okay, halal is to determine how good the food is, like how good of a quality the food is. And it's a guideline to add the emphasis on hygiene. Like we all think about like pigs, alcohol, don't eat those. But halal is more than that. If I were to eat something from a very dirty factory, that's not halal. So yeah. Other stuff include GMP and HACCP. I don't really have to go through this much. The last thing is green technology, just the development and application of products, equipment, and systems to preserve the environment and nature, while minimizing or reducing the negative impacts of human activities. So long story short, you want to green technology is basically when you want to use plants. Yeah, you want to improve on like certain things in the world. Like you use plants to as your equipment, as your products. Okay, I'm not that good at explaining it. Sorry. Okay. a good explanation on green technology is wait it's basically using new technology to replace technology that can pollute the world. You want to use stuff that is more economically friendly, more green. Yeah, more economically friendly is called green technology lah. Technology that is more economically friendly is called green technology. So for example, let me see if there's any examples here. I don't know if there's any examples here. Or here, for example, solar energy, water catchment systems, and using recycled building materials. Or you can also do the green wall, because green wall has plants. How do you know if something is green technology or not? It will minimize environmental degradation. It does not release that much greenhouse gases. It is safe to use. It is efficient, and it is using renewable resources. So basically, if your thing does not cause pollution, it is a good. It is a green. It is considered green technology. If it doesn't cause pollution, if it's a good thing, it is considered green technology. So the NGTP, I don't know if it'll come out, but I think it'll come in like objective. It is based on 4 things: energy, environment, social economy. So SEEE, energy, environment, social economy. And so what can you do at home that can be considered as green technology? Number 1, you can use fruit waste to produce cleaning agents like detergent and soap. Number 2, you can recycle your waste to make compost or to make natural fertilizer for crops. Number 3, you make biogas from organic solid waste. I don't know how to do that. Number 4 is similar to the composting thing, but instead you use banana peels to make flour, and flour can be used to make natural bioplastic, so plastic that is biodegradable. And lastly, you can use fertilizer out of liquid. So you can use it's same thing lah. You can use like kitchen waste and food waste to become a fertilizer. Okay, application of social science to solve environmental problems and challenges. So, how do you get people to tackle the issue? So, number 1 is you want people to be more aware of it. Number 2 is you want people to know more about it. Number 3 is you want people to be able to do it. And number 4 is you want people to be able to actually take care of the environment. So number 1, awareness. Number 2, knowledge. Number 3, skills. And number 4, actually taking care. So you want the people to be more aware. You want them to know how to conserve. You want them to try it out and be good at it. And you want them to actually work. So how do you do this? You want to communicate more about this. You want to spread it more through social media. You want to do more events at Gotong Royong.